I am Clara James, and my husband Victor passed away less than a week ago. The funeral took place on a bleak autumn morning. Fallen leaves blanketed the cemetery grounds. It wasn't raining, but the air was cold enough to bite through my coat. I stood there holding a bouquet of white lilies, listening as the pastor read the final farewell. Next to me stood Lisa Victor's daughter, from his previous marriage, tears streaming down her face. But I couldn't tell if it was genuine grief or just a well-rehearsed performance. I wasn't Lisa's biological mother. When I met Victor, he was already a single father living with Lisa in a 3-story suburban mansion on the north side of the city. After 3 years of dating, we got married. At first, Lisa politely called me Miss Clara, but that formality soon gave way to coldness, then silence, then a wall I could never get past. I never tried to replace her mother. I only wanted to be a friend, a listener, but Lisa never let me. 3 days after the funeral, while I was tidying up wedding photos on the wooden shelf, the doorbell rang. A man in a suit stood outside holding a stack of papers. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Clara. I'm Lisa's personal attorney. May I have a moment of your time?" I nodded and invited him in. Lisa was already sitting in the living room, arms crossed, her face as cold as a January morning. "Mrs. Clara," Lisa began, her voice carefully composed. "I understand this is a difficult time, but there are some matters we need to address." The lawyer opened the folder and pulled out a notarized document. "This is a deed of transfer. According to this, Mr. Victor James transferred full ownership of the property-linked bank accounts and private stock shares to Ms. Lisa 6 months before his passing." I felt the ground beneath me shift. He gave everything to her. Lisa nodded without a flicker of emotion. "My father wanted to ensure the assets were managed properly. And I'm sorry, Mrs. Clara, but your name isn't listed on any legal documents. This house now belongs to me." I froze. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt cold. "I'll move out," I said softly. "The sooner the better," Lisa added, as if eager to wrap things up. I turned and walked up the stairs into the room Victor and I had shared for nearly 8 years. His pillow still smelled faintly of his old cologne. I carefully packed his clothes into a suitcase, took down our framed photos, and placed the journal I used to write him in a small bag. Everything else, the paintings, the furniture, the keepsakes, I left behind. Because I knew if I had to fight for them, then I had never truly owned them in his heart. As I was about to leave, I remembered the safe in his study, the place where Victor kept important documents. I wasn't expecting much, but still I entered the old code, our shared birth date. The safe clicked open. There were no jewels inside, no cash, just a sealed envelope bearing his familiar handwriting. "My dearest Clara, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. But don't let grief cloud your judgment. Go see Mr. Jonathan at our old bank, Peterson and Fox main branch. He knows what's true, and I believe you're strong enough to reclaim what you deserve." I clutched the letter tightly. In that moment, all my heartbreak crystallized into one thing: resolve. I left the mansion that afternoon with nothing but 2 suitcases, a letter, and the trust I had placed in the man I once called my husband. No one saw me off. Lisa closed the door the moment I stepped outside. I didn't know where I would go, but I knew exactly where I would go: First Peterson and Fox Bank. Because if Victor had left anything behind for me, it wasn't wealth. It was the truth. That morning, it was drizzling lightly. I sat on the wooden bench outside the Peterson and Dune Bank branch, a gray granite building nestled along the city's main avenue. Victor and I used to come here every month to handle our finances, but it had been 4 years since I last set foot in this place. I stepped inside. There were no familiar faces except for one name Victor had mentioned in his letter: Jonathan Wright, Senior Financial Director. "I'd like to see Mr. Jonathan Wright," I told the receptionist. "Do you have an appointment, ma'am?" I handed her the letter Victor had sealed in an envelope bearing his handwriting and original signature. She studied it for a moment, then stood up quickly. "Right this way, please." A few minutes later, Jonathan Wright emerged. He was in his early 60s, tall and lean, with neatly groomed silver hair. When he saw me, he smiled, not the polite kind, but one of genuine warmth. Mrs. Clara, I've been expecting you. Victor spoke a lot about you. I clenched my hands slightly. I just want the truth. He nodded. Let's step into a private room. We'll talk somewhere quieter. The hidden account revealed Jonathan placed a thick, leather-bound folder in front of me. He opened the first page and slid it across the desk. 7 years ago, Mr. Victor James opened a special investment account jointly under the names Victor James and Clara James. The current balance is 5.2 million US dollars distributed across 4 investment portfolios and 2 reserve accounts. I froze. Joint account correct. And under bank policy, this asset belongs fully to you. No additional will or probate is required. You have full access and control. I had to remind myself to breathe slowly. I had always assumed Victor kept everything to himself because Lisa made sure I believed that. But no. He had trusted me enough to share everything long ago silently without fanfare. Jonathan continued. Additionally, he established 2 trust funds for his grandchildren, Lisa and Tyler's kids. Each fund holds $250,000 meant to support college tuition and healthcare when needed. I sat quietly. Then why transfer the house title to Lisa if he had already set up trusts? Jonathan sighed. I can't speak for Victor's intentions, but perhaps he wanted to avoid future legal disputes. Or maybe he thought he had more time to fix things. I nodded. So he left me everything that truly mattered, without a speech, without a show. A shocking discovery: funds misused. Jonathan flipped to another folder. However, there's something else, something that prompted me to reach out to you right away. My heartbeat quickened. We just completed a routine audit of the trust fund expenses. Over the past 18 months, nearly $300,000 has been withdrawn from both accounts for purposes that do not align with the trust's intent. I frowned. What do you mean? Not aligned. Jonathan nodded and handed me a detailed statement. The withdrawals included first-class airfare luxury credit card bills, high-end jewelry purchases, and a down payment on a new Porsche registered under Tyler Mitchell, Lisa's husband. I was stunned. Who authorized the withdrawals? He pointed to the signature field. Both Lisa and Tyler. They falsified financial supervisory documents declaring themselves as custodians of the funds. I gripped the paper tightly. So they didn't just throw me out. They embezzled money meant for their own children. Jonathan's voice turned firm. Legally, you are the original appointed trustee as clearly stated in the trust's formation documents. What they've done is a serious breach. If you wish to proceed, we will support you in preparing a full legal case. I sat in silence for a long moment. As I stared at the names, Lisa Mitchell and Tyler Mitchell on the statement, I didn't feel rage, just deep, bitter disappointment. I stood up, my voice calm. Jonathan, I'm not out for revenge, but I also won't let this continue. The law must speak not for me, but for those 2 children. Jonathan nodded. We'll prepare all necessary documentation. All you need to do is sign. I signed. My hand didn't tremble, because this time I wasn't just defending myself. I was protecting a generation from the selfishness of their own parents. Before I left, Jonathan handed me one last envelope. This was Victor's final message. He left it as an internal document, not publicly shared, but I think you should read it. I opened it and read the short note. If Clara ever comes, let her know I didn't choose her because she was perfect. I chose her because when everyone turned away, she stayed. I left the bank that day not as a discarded widow, but as the one he trusted until the very end. I used to think that silence was noble. But now I understand sometimes silence is complicity, and I no longer want to be a bystander in my own life. 3 days after my meeting at the bank, I contacted my attorney Meredith Clark, a calm yet sharp woman known for handling high-stakes trust litigation. When I told her everything and handed over the evidence provided by the bank, she said just one thing: it's time to bring them in and demand answers. The meeting begins. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning at Clark & Associates' 15th floor of the Slate Building. I arrived 30 minutes early. Meredith had already prepared all documents clearly outlining each misused expense from my grandchildren's trust funds. Every page was stamped and verified by Peterson and Dune Bank. At exactly 9 a.m., Lisa and Tyler walked in. Lisa wore a beige Chanel coat and clutched a large black leather bag. She carried herself with the same icy confidence she'd always used to look down on me. Tyler followed closely, visibly tense, his tie crooked and palms sweating. They had no idea what they were walking into. The confrontation. Meredith opened the meeting. Thank you for coming. Today's discussion is in regard to financial irregularities involving the two trust funds set up in the names of Mrs. Clara James's grandchildren, established by her late husband, Mr. Victor James. Lisa raised her brow. I thought we were here to talk about the house. Is this some lawsuit? Now I looked her in the eye. Not a lawsuit. Just a conversation initiated by the legal trustee of those funds. That would be me. Meredith slid a folder across the table. Here are detailed statements from the last 18 months. Over $300,000 has been withdrawn for personal expenses, credit cards, luxury travel, and vehicle purchases. None of it aligned with the educational or healthcare purposes outlined in the trust. Tyler frowned. Lisa scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. She must have forced my dad to sign all this, who sets up a joint account with someone like her? Meredith didn't flinch. She calmly handed over another document. This is a statement from Peterson and Dune Bank. The joint investment account was opened 7 years ago with 3 senior staff members as witnesses. There's also a video recording of Mr. Victor signing and clearly stating his intent, while fully coherent. I spoke up, and this is a report from Victor's neurologist, his regular doctor for 3 years. It confirms that Victor was in full mental health at the time of signing the documents. Lisa fell silent for a moment. Then, as if reacting purely out of instinct, she snapped, What do you want to take everything to throw us in jail? To make our kids grow up without parents? I looked straight at her. My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. I want my children to take responsibility for what they've done. Not for me, but for the very kids they used to justify their theft. I freeze the trust funds. Meredith pushed another document forward. As of 8 a.m. this morning, both trust funds have been legally frozen under Mrs. Clara James's rightful authority. No further transactions will be allowed until full reconciliation and restitution of the misused funds. Tyler shot up. Wait, I was just helping out with extra family expenses. I didn't know it was wrong, Meredith replied calmly. Under law, there is no family support clause in these funds. They are strictly for education and medical needs. Any deviation is a breach. The severity of that breach will be assessed, and if necessary, forwarded to the Financial Crimes Court. Lisa tried again. My father always said I'd have full financial control. He just didn't get the chance to formalize it before he died. I interrupted. Then why forge the signatures? Why fake documents if you were so confident? Lisa flushed with anger. Because I knew you'd take everything. No. I didn't take anything. I simply protected what belonged to me and what belongs to those 2 children. A 30-day ultimatum. Meredith added one last document. Our office is formally demanding that Mr. Tyler and Mrs. Lisa Mitchell repay $297,540, the exact amount withdrawn without authorization plus interest within 30 days. Failure to do so will result in legal action for breach of fiduciary duty and document forgery. The room went heavy, silent. Lisa stood up and scoffed. You won, Victor, and now you want all the money too. He must be turning in his grave. I stood slowly and answered softly, No, Lisa. Victor would be resting peacefully, knowing I didn't stay silent when I saw something wrong. I walked out, finally heard. I left the law office not with a sense of victory, but with a sense of peace. Because I knew I did the right thing, not to get revenge, but to stop a chain of wrongs that could hurt future generations. That afternoon, I took a walk through the nearby park. Children were playing. An elderly woman sat reading a novel, sunlight streaking through the trees onto the grass like gold. I thought of Victor. He would be proud, not because I held on to the money, but because I held on to decency, even when pushed to the edge. I never expected to hear from Lisa, not just days after that tense confrontation at the lawyer's office. Her message was short. No apology, no arrogance like before. If you can still see me without hate, I'd like to talk just once. Not as opponents, but as someone trying to understand her father. I thought about it for a long time. Saturday morning at Victor's favorite spot. That Saturday, I sat in the quiet corner of a small cafe near the city library, a place Victor used to love in his final years. We used to sit by the window, read the paper sip tea, and talk about things we never quite managed to fix. Lisa was 10 minutes late, but the woman who walked in didn't look like the same person who once tried to push me out of the family. She wore a simple white blouse, her hair tied back, no makeup, her eyes heavy as if something inside had shattered. She didn't make small talk. I didn't come here for money, and not to apologize. I just need to know what my father truly thought about me. I looked at her, and for a moment, all the pride, anger, and bitterness on her face seemed to dissolve. I nodded, slowly, reached into my purse, and pulled out an old envelope. Inside were copies of letters Victor had written to her, letters she had never seen. Letters that were never answered. I kept these for 10 years, I said. Victor never got a reply, but he kept writing year after year. Lisa's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. The pages were worn, some corners smudged with faded ink, like Victor had written them in moments of heartbreak. Dear Lisa, today is your birthday. I hope you received the gift I sent and know that I still think of you, even if you don't call back. I stood outside your apartment last week. Your mother wouldn't let me in. I don't blame you. I just want you to know I'll always be waiting. Lisa read in silence, then gently placed the letters on the table. She didn't speak for several minutes. When she finally looked up, tears slid down her cheeks, soaking into the cracks of the wooden table. I thought he didn't want me anymore, she whispered. My mom always said, when a man gets a new wife, he throws out the old child like a worn shirt. I waited for him every birthday. When he never came, I believed she was right. I stayed quiet. Lisa continued as if saying things she'd never been allowed to admit. And then, I hated him, so much so that when I found out he opened an account with you, I thought he'd replaced me for good. Victor never saw it that way, I said gently. He came to your house 5 times, I was told. Each time he was turned away. He sent gifts, paid tuition, but you never responded. You never even knew. Lisa shook her head. My mother hid everything. I never saw a single gift. Not one letter. Not a word. I didn't defend Victor. The dead can't defend themselves. And what he couldn't fix, I couldn't fix for him. But I could show her the other side, so she might understand not all hurt is intentional, and not everyone finds the courage to speak in time. Lisa looked at me not as an enemy, but as a daughter who just wanted to be seen. I was wrong to blame you. I thought you broke up my family, took everything from me. But you're the only one who kept my father's words. My mom didn't even keep his memory. I didn't nod. I didn't deny it. I just said, there are things grown-ups fail to do, things they mess up, but you're not them. You can choose a different path. Lisa lowered her head and cried like a child, no longer the woman who had misused her children's trust, no longer the one who pushed me out of my home, just a daughter, wounded, lost, and finally brave enough to speak. I didn't comfort her. I didn't hug her. I didn't call her my daughter. I simply placed my hand on the stack of old letters and said, you need to repair what your father couldn't. Don't let your children grow up with hate. Don't make them search for the truth like you did. Lisa looked at me for a long time, then nodded, no promises, no declarations, just a silent nod, the quietest form of commitment. A different future. On the way home, I passed through the park. Leaves covered the path. A young couple played with their daughter, the father lifting her high in the air, both laughing. I paused, thinking of Victor, of Lisa, of the wounds that never quite healed. Pain is never one-sided, and sometimes truth hurts more than lies. But it's the truth that opens the door to healing if we're brave enough to face it. People think justice feels satisfying, that exposing the wrongdoers brings peace. But after the hearings, the lawyers, the sleepless nights, what I felt was not triumph. It was exhaustion. Not because I was weak, but because I knew, in the end, what matters isn't punishment. It's the question, what will I do with the power I still have? A legacy of good. One morning in early October, I sat quietly in the living room staring at Victor's photo. He was smiling that gentle smile with eyes that always seemed to hide something. I held my tea and whispered, "You're gone now. But I'm still here. And I want to live what's left of my life with dignity, even if you wouldn't agree with how I do it." Then I set down my cup, grabbed my coat, and headed to Peterson and Dunebank, where Jonathan was already waiting. "I'd like to set up a scholarship fund," I said, in Victor Hawthorne's name, "for medical students from low-income families, especially those who lost someone to illness." Jonathan nodded. "I remember him saying if he weren't in business, he would have been a doctor. He couldn't save his mother," I said. It haunted him. "I want to make sure someone else has the chance he never had." We started with $500,000 divided into smaller annual awards with a board of review priority given to local students. I told Jonathan I don't need my name engraved in gold. I just want every student who gets that scholarship to know it came from someone who lost everything, failed deeply, but still believed in kindness. A trust for Lisa with conditions. A few days later, I met with Jonathan again, this time with a more delicate request. I want to create a trust in Lisa Hawthorne's name, but with limited access. Jonathan looked surprised. "You still want to give her money, after all that?" "Not for her," I said. "For her children. They didn't do anything wrong." The trust conditions. We agreed on $200,000 structured tightly. Funds could only be used for education, tuition, books, extracurriculars, healthcare insurance checkups, treatment. Every expense required invoices and third-party oversight. Any suspicious spending would freeze the account. Repeat offenses. The remainder would go to local educational charities. Jonathan reviewed the terms and nodded. Strict, but fair. Lisa signs. A week later, Lisa arrived at the bank to sign the trust documents. She entered the room cautiously. Across from her sat me, Jonathan, and a legal officer. "I didn't think you'd do this," she said softly. I stayed quiet, then said, "I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for Jordan and Ellie. They don't deserve to suffer because of our failures." Lisa's voice cracked. "I know I don't deserve it, but I won't let you down again. You don't have to impress me," I said. "Just do right by your kids." 2 little letters. A month later, I received 2 tiny handwritten letters. From Jordan, "Mrs. Clara Mom said you helped me learn piano. I love it. Come hear me play sometime." From Ellie, "I like you. Mom says you're like the nice princess in cartoons. Do you like buttered toast?" I sat in my kitchen reading them over and over, not out of pride, but because I realized I hadn't just fixed an old mistake. I'd stopped a new generation from repeating it. A new home, a new life. Weeks later, I left the big house behind. I moved to a small town with a local library, a family-run bakery, and outdoor concerts in summer. I began offering free art classes to neighborhood children. Each child received a box of crayons, a sketchbook, and one instruction. If you can't say it with words, let your drawings speak for your heart. No revenge. A neighbor once asked, "Why didn't you sue them? Take everything and cut them off." I smiled, not bitter, but with a quiet understanding. Because revenge doesn't make me stronger, it just makes me more like them. But healing, that gives me a reason to keep living. When people hear how I was kicked out of my home after my husband died, only to return later with full legal ownership, many assume I won. But the truth is, if there was any feeling of victory, it passed quickly. I once stood in that grand house, thousands of square feet, where Victor and I had shared nearly 20 years, and felt nothing warm left inside. Everything had become just objects. No more laughter echoing from the kitchen, no faint trace of his morning aftershave. Just brick drywall and cold wood. That's when I knew it was time to close that chapter. A new family, a new beginning. Not long after I put the house up for sale, a young family came to see it. They had 3 little children and a playful Labrador that ran joyfully around the yard the first time they visited. The wife, maybe in her early 30s, held my hand as we signed the deposit papers. "We'll take care of every corner of this house, ma'am, and if you ever visit, the kids would love to see you." I smiled gently. "You don't need to worry. This house has fulfilled its purpose. Now it's time for me to write a new chapter of my life." I moved to a small town about 45 minutes outside the city, a place where neighbors still greet each other in the morning, where the mailman knows everyone's name, and the cafe by the corner always keeps a window seat open for its regulars. My new home had only 2 bedrooms, a small front garden full of lavender, and an apple tree just starting to bear fruit. No tall gates, no fancy doorbells, no cleaning staff, just me, the fresh air, and birdsong each morning. I didn't want to vanish from the world. I just wanted a simple life and one that still felt full. Back to giving. A few weeks after settling in, I started offering free wellness classes at the local community center for seniors. I taught what seemed like small things: how to check your blood pressure, how to choose heart-healthy foods, how to maintain balance while walking, and how to care for yourself daily without depending on others. No one called me doctor or professor. They just called me Clara, the one who listens. One elderly man once told me after a session I used to think I was just waiting to die. But now, thanks to you, I think I still have things to do. For my grandkids. Another woman, widowed young, cried when I said, "Sometimes we live long not to wait for death, but to learn how to love life again in our own way." A letter that left me still. One winter morning, I was shelving books in our little classroom when the mailman knocked. He handed me a cream-colored envelope sealed with care, addressed in slightly tilted, neat handwriting to Mrs. Clara. Inside was a small note written in purple ink, the childlike handwriting instantly familiar. "Dear Mrs. Clara, Mom said, you're the one who saved our family. Thank you for letting me learn piano, and for giving Mom a second chance. I'll study hard, be good, and won't let you down. Love, Ellie." I set the letter down and leaned against the chair, my hands trembling not from overwhelming emotion, but from quiet understanding. Because I knew then everything I had done had finally reached the right place. I didn't need a courtroom to win. I didn't need to reclaim every cent to prove anything. I had won by refusing to walk the path of bitterness. I didn't yell. I didn't post angry rants online. I didn't turn myself into a permanent victim. Instead, I moved quietly, with clarity, with intention. And in doing so, I became something Lisa and maybe others never expected: a woman who chose to live by her values, even after betrayal, disrespect, and being pushed out of her own home. Weekend visits from time to time. Lisa brings the kids to visit on weekends. She's no longer ashamed, but not overly familiar either. We talk like 2 grown women, no more stepmother and stepdaughter, no heirs and outcasts. We talk about Ellie's classes, Jordan's piano practice, and her upcoming job application for a secretary role at the local hospital. "I won't let my past mistakes stop me," she said once. I nodded. "Because now you understand being a real adult means more than admitting you were wrong. It means fixing it." Nightly reminders. Every evening I still sit at my writing desk by the window. The warm yellow light falls across the pages. I don't write to vent. I don't write to seek sympathy. I write to remind myself, people may push you out, strip you of your title, erase your name from everything you built. But if you keep your dignity, if you keep your clarity, you'll return through the front door. No bell, no applause. Just your eyes, your smile, and a life lived in truth. I took it all back, not just the assets, not just my name on the bank forms. I took back my right to choose a life of decency. And in the end, that is the most worthy victory for a woman once pushed out the door, but who never lost herself.